Beer to Whiskey Studios high atop Barley's Tap Room on Washington Street in downtown Greenville, South Carolina. This is Beer to Whiskey. I'm your host, Russ Heaps, and this is one of our Beer 101 episodes where I get my buddy Big Jon Richards here, who is sort of our PhD of craft beer to...
Honorary.
Honor. Yeah, it's more of an honorary title than it is. If you believe me, if he would, it would be doctor. He'd have that on somewhere on his outfit.
It's like wear it on my head.
Yeah, but anyway, he's sort of our beer to whiskey craft beer expert, and this is an episode where he picks something about beer that he thinks would be of interest to me and to you guys, and we talk about it. But before we get into that, Big Jon, what do we want him to do?
Oh, we want you to like us, just really like us, and like click on like us and subscribe, and, you know,
Yeah.
those types of perfunctory things.
Right. We want you to be part of the Beer to Whiskey family, part of
Yeah.
the Beer to Whiskey crew. So you see the thumbs up down underneath us here. Click on that for like. At the end of the video, there's a page where there are a couple of other videos you can choose to watch. There's also a Beer to Whiskey icon that you can click on and you'd be all subscribed. A new video comes out every Thursday at noon East Coast time. And with that out of the way, Big Jon, what are we going to talk about today? What are we going to learn today?
Well, we were talking, sitting around the table a little while ago, and
We just had some of their pizza.
oh, yeah.
Barley's is not only, you see there's about more than 30 taps behind us here. Downstairs there's more than 40 more. Plus they've got cases of bottles and cans of different things. So this is really
beer
kind
from
of, beer headquarters of upstate South Carolina. But on top of that, they make great pizzas, and
Right.
which we just wolfed one down here right before we started this segment. I'm sorry I interrupted.
That's all right. No, it's comments. That's what we do here. We comment.
Exactly.
So I happened to be noticing my glass developing this real hefty lace here, as you can probably see, hopefully see. It's not quite as aggressive a lacing as we had when we were over there half an hour ago before we got in all the way into this, but it's like, you know what we should do for Beer 101? We should talk about Belgian lace. And these days, fewer people call it Belgian lace, they just tend to call it lacing, but it's like, we can sit down and talk about what it is and why it's important, where it comes from, and what this stuff is on your glass and whether you should like it or not. And spoiler alert, you should like it.
Yeah.
So, good beer is going to leave lace on your glass.
Okay.
To some degree or another. It's really from a couple of sources. One, and it's fun, like I'm sitting here just looking at it, like looking at this, like even the way just the head's going down on mine. I don't know how much you can tell on camera, but it's just stuck to the side of the glass all the way up to the rim up here.
Yeah, we're right there.
It's great. I mean, one of the reasons why I chose this guy is a Hefeweizen, and it plays right into what, where it comes from. The primary place it comes from is obviously your carbonation. You're going to create those bubbles. They create little bubbles in the thing. They pop up, and some of the beer sticks to the outside of the bubble and turns into beer frosting on your glass, really. There's a couple things that really lead to that.
Is beer frosting an industry term, or is that your term?
That's, I'm going to make it an industry term.
That's a great term.
That one was kind of off the cuff, if you will. Seriously. So the beer frosting comes from a couple of sources. There's in a beer like this, it's primarily going to come from the proteins that are in the beer. So if you add wheat or oats or something that's not barley, it's going to have a lot higher protein content. The proteins in there are going to be a little bit more aggressive, and they're going to hold on to each other a lot better. So it's just going to stick to itself a lot more, and so it sticks to other things more. So if you're drinking a wheat beer, or if you're drinking an oatmeal stout, or something, a rye or something like that that's got one of these not barley grains, it's going to have a lot more lace. And all beer is going to have a little bit of that in it, nevertheless. And two is from, in this case, in our case over here, it's more from the hop oils. So you drop in a bunch of hops into a beer, the hops are going to help those, whatever proteins are in there, stick together, and they're going to create their own sort of oily thickness that's going on, because as you cook hops into the beer, you're just dissolving their oils into the beer, and so it's just going to create a little bit of that texture.
And if I remember correctly we just did a Big Jon and 5 on this particular beer, and as I recall, there are 3 hops in that? Is that
3
right?
different hops in this one, and it's loaded up with them because it's a New England IPA. So you don't put them in there for a bittering hop addition so much, but you still get a lot of the oils dissolving into the beer just without so much of the alpha acids. You're not boiling it down. So that's where your lace really comes from. Another comforting sort of aspect that you're going to find when you notice that your beer is lacing is you got a clean glass. And I think we've talked about this at least once before on one of the Beer 101 somewhere that, if you sit down at a beer bar, you should always notice there's no lacing on the glass and there's no bubbles sticking to the side of the glass. If there are, you don't have a clean glass on your hand. So,
You mean if there aren't?
if there are bubbles, if there
are bubbles on your glass, it's a
if
clean
there's
glass.
lacing on your glass, it's clean glass. If there's bubbles inside the beer,
Oh, okay.
you don't want that.
Okay.
If you see bubbles inside your beer, that means there's something that the carbonation is sticking to on the side of the glass, creating a little nucleation site. So it's letting the carbonation sort of bond there and turn into bubbles that are going to come up and create lace on the top of your beer. But if they're inside the beer, it's not a good sign. And you're also not going to get the lacing on a glass that's not clean, because the carbonation is going to scrub the beer as it goes down. It's just not going to let it stick.
Okay.
That's really kind of where it comes from, why it's there and why it's good for you. On top of that, it's just pretty. And you look at it as you drink your beer. And
Yep.
as I was drinking this one, as I spin it, you can see the side I was drinking from the whole time, and the other one's like this stratification of where my last sip came from. So you can score yourself if you want to.
It's almost like geology where you see the striations on the cliffs.
Exactly. Yeah, see, look at that.
I know,
It
that's
just sticks to the
beautiful.
side of the glass. It's gorgeous. We used to call this, when I was coming up in beer, like when there was only like one beer book in the world,
Right.
everyone that I knew called it Belgian lacing. And hardly anybody does anymore, they just call it lacing. And at the time I thought, wow, it's maybe because the Belgian beers were particularly good at creating this lacing, and they are. But I don't know that Belgian lacing is really the correct term for it anymore. It's just sort of lacing.
Lacing.
But there you go. You can
It's sort of like lakes in
see
a wine
that
glass.
exactly.
Okay.
Except it really legitimately means something here.
For all you wine snobs out there, I guess he told you.
That was not a jab. It was more a jab at people who pretend to want to be wine snobs. But yeah, it's fun the way you can see the thing turning into, it looks like a little doily coming down the side of the glass.
Maybe I'm not drinking mine properly.
You're taking small sips.
Is that what the deal is?
Beer keeps washing your head down as it goes.
That's
Maybe
about as big a...
Maybe your beer just doesn't like you.
That could be it. It just doesn't want to cooperate in this little experiment.
Right.
Anything else we should know?
Those are the basics. Do you have any questions from the other side that I didn't, something that made you go,
No, not really. As you know, that almost never happens.
Well, one of the reasons I like doing these with Russ is he keeps me on my toes. He has a wonderful ability to stump the teacher from time to time.
I do occasionally ask a question I can't answer, but the emphasis is on occasionally. Okay. Well,
No, that's the big one.
All right.
There's nothing, half an hour's worth to talk about when it comes to beer lacing, but it is important and
And I'm
finding
sure
out what it
they're,
is.
I'm sure they're reading.
Hopefully so. I would be tired of watching me if I were them.
All right then. Well, with that,
Here's to it.
text Miss Lily, and we'll see you next time.
Here's to you.